Have you ever felt like being thoughtful is a disadvantage? That thinking too deeply makes you slower, lonelier, and somehow less fit for this world? If so, you're not imagining it. You're living in an age where intelligence has quietly become a crime, and stupidity, manufactured, polished, and proudly displayed, has become the new virtue. This isn't an insult to anyone. It's an observation of the silent war happening inside your mind every day. A war you didn't sign up for, but are already losing. Because the system you live in doesn't want you to think, it wants you to react. It doesn't want you to question, it wants you to obey. And the scariest part? It rewards you for doing so. Think about this. Every empire that collapsed, every civilization that rotted from within, followed the same path. First, it worshipped intelligence. Then it tolerated stupidity. And finally, it celebrated it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a theologian who was executed for defying the Nazis, once said that stupidity is more dangerous than evil, because evil can be confronted, argued with, exposed. But stupidity, true stupidity, is invincible. It doesn't listen. It doesn't care. It wears ignorance like armor and calls it opinion. Look around. We live in a time where confidence replaces competence, where shouting is mistaken for strength, and where being relatable is valued more than being right. The modern world no longer asks, "Is this true?" It asks, "Does it get clicks?" The great irony is that intelligence has become self-destructive. The more you see, the less you can belong. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to participate in the theater of normal life. It's what Nietzsche called the burden of clarity. He said that when you gaze long enough into the abyss gazes back. But what he didn't say was that the abyss smiles at you, offers you a brand deal, and asks you to post about it on Instagram. Machiavelli, centuries earlier, saw this coming. He warned that rulers would always prefer obedient fools over independent thinkers. Why? Because fools don't question orders. They cheer them. They make the corruption look like order, and tyranny look like progress. That's the genius of modern stupidity. It doesn't come from the poor or the uneducated. It's engineered by the cleverest minds in the world. The algorithms, the marketing departments, the think tanks. They've learned to weaponize ignorance, not by suppressing truth, but by burying it under 10 million distractions. They don't burn books anymore. They drown you in noise until wisdom suffocates on your scrolling thumb. Plato warned us about this thousands of years ago in his allegory of the cave. He said most people live chained in shadows, mistaking illusions for truth. But imagine if the prisoners chose to stay there, if they laughed at anyone who tried to show them the sunlight, calling them pretentious, negative, or elitist. That's where we are now. The new cave isn't made of stone. It's built from screens, and the shadows are not flickering flames. They're high-definition, perfectly optimized, algorithmically tailored illusions designed to keep you staring. Have you noticed how modern culture makes intelligence exhausting? To question is to be difficult. To doubt is to be negative. To speak with precision is to be boring. But to be impulsive, loud, and dramatic, that's authentic. That's how the world rewards stupidity, by branding it as honesty, and intelligence by branding it as arrogance. But here's the cruel trick. Even the intelligent are not immune. We've learned to hide our intelligence behind humor, to disguise depth as sarcasm, to trade conviction for convenience. Because the wise are tired, and the foolish are loud, and the loud always win, at least for a while. Psychology calls this the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less people know, the more certain they feel. Meanwhile, the more someone understands, the more they question their own certainty. It's a tragic paradox. The ignorant shout, while the intelligent whisper, and society follows the volume, not the wisdom.
It's why power so often belongs to fools, because in politics, in business, even in relationships, truth doesn't win. Confidence does. And so we elect the bold, not the wise. We promote the agreeable, not the capable. We worship charisma, not character. Sometimes I wonder if intelligence itself is a curse, because awareness isolates. It forces you to see what others refuse to. You see the manipulation behind kindness, the propaganda hidden in entertainment, the emptiness behind success. And the more you understand, the more you ache. You can't unsee the machinery behind the smile. But maybe that's what Nietzsche meant by amor fati, to love your fate, to love the pain of awareness, to accept that in a stupid society, wisdom will always feel like exile. But exile is where truth lives. It's where the soul breathes without masks, where thought is not a performance, and silence is not ignorance, it's rebellion. Every era has its religion. Ours is distraction. We no longer seek salvation, we seek stimulation. We've replaced contemplation with therapy speak, and truth with what feels right. The modern man prays not to God, but to the algorithm. He doesn't ask what is true, he asks, what's trending? And yet, beneath all this noise, a quiet rebellion is forming. You can feel it, can't you? The silent refusal to participate in the circus, the hunger for meaning, for stillness, for something real in a world that rewards the fake. It's the return of the thinker, the one who chooses solitude over approval, who dares to question not to be clever, but to be free. Bonhoeffer believed that stupidity wasn't a lack of intelligence, but a moral failure, a choice to remain blind when sight is possible. And that's the heart of it. The war we face isn't between smart and stupid. It's between awareness and denial, between those who seek truth and those who seek comfort. And comfort is seductive. It tells you to scroll instead of think, to react instead of reflect, to obey instead of rebel. But every time you choose comfort, you surrender a little piece of your soul. And one day you wake up surrounded by smiling idiots and realize you've become one of them. So what can you do? Start small. Read slowly. Think deeply. Speak less. Seek silence, not because you're weak, but because silence sharpens thought. Refuse to be entertained by everything. Guard your attention as if it was sacred, because it is. And most importantly, learn to stand alone, because intelligence, in a world designed for stupidity, will always feel lonely. But that loneliness is proof you're still awake. Maybe the real revolution isn't in overthrowing systems, but in refusing to be programmed by them. To think, truly think, is an act of rebellion. And maybe that's why intelligence became a crime. Because once people begin to think, no empire, no ideology, no screen can control them anymore. So, if you've ever been told you think too much, feel too deeply, or see too clearly, take it as a compliment. You are the resistance. You are the antidote to the age of manufactured stupidity. Because in a time when thinking is dangerous, being wise is the bravest thing you can do. And yet, here's the bitter paradox. you will not be thanked for it. You will be misunderstood, mocked, and sometimes even hated. Because when you hold up a mirror to a blind world, people don't see reflection. They see attack. They don't say thank you. They say, who do you think you are?
But truth has never needed applause. It only needs endurance. Every philosopher who tried to wake society up was ridiculed in their lifetime. Socrates was forced to drink poison. Nietzsche died alone, broken, and forgotten. Bonhoeffer was executed in a concentration camp. Even Jesus was crucified between two thieves. The wise have always paid for their clarity with their peace. But they understood something the comfortable never could: that a life lived in blindness is no life at all. Look at the modern world. We are more connected than ever, yet lonelier than any generation before. We've built tools that could make us gods, and yet we use them to destroy our attention spans. Our ancestors looked to the stars for meaning. We look to notifications. And each ping, each scroll draws us further from the ability to sit alone with our own mind. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." He said that in the 1600s, long before smartphones, before TikTok, before the algorithm learned your soul's weaknesses. Imagine what he would say now. We've reached a point where silence feels like suffocation. The absence of noise feels unbearable. So we fill it with gossip, with outrage, with the comforting stupidity of endless entertainment. Because deep down, we're terrified of meeting ourselves in the quiet. We're scared of what we might find. But here's the twist. The system doesn't need to silence the intelligent anymore. It only needs to exhaust them. You don't have to be censored if you're too tired to speak. You don't have to be imprisoned if your prison is your own mind. All they have to do is keep you distracted, keep you busy, keep you scrolling, keep you numb. That's why modern stupidity feels safe. It's anesthesia for the soul. It soothes the pain of thinking too much. It tells you, relax, it's not that deep. And little by little, you start to agree. You start to surrender the very thing that makes you human. Your capacity to reason, to feel, to doubt, to question. And then one day you wake up and realize you've been trained to enjoy your own ignorance. You've been taught to laugh at wisdom, to mock sincerity, to treat cynicism as intelligence. And that's when you know the system has won. But it doesn't have to. Every empire built on stupidity eventually collapses. Because stupidity can't sustain itself. It consumes everything, including its creators. Rome fell not because of barbarians, but because of decadence. The Weimar Republic didn't collapse from weakness, but from the arrogance of believing it couldn't. History repeats itself, not because we forget it, but because we refuse to understand it. And we are living in that repetition. We are the generation that knows too much and understands too little. We can access every piece of information ever recorded, and yet we rarely access our own conscience. But there's still hope. There always is. Because truth doesn't die, it just hides, waiting for someone brave enough to speak it again. And maybe that someone is you. Imagine what would happen if you stopped playing the game, if you stopped competing in the arena of noise, if you chose to be still, to think, to learn, to grow, not for approval, but for the quiet satisfaction of being real. You would terrify them, because independent minds cannot be predicted, and unprogrammed souls cannot be controlled. That's the secret the powerful have always feared. that one truly awake mind is more dangerous than 1,000 obedient ones, that one whisper of truth can unravel an empire of lies. And maybe that's the real reason intelligence became a crime, because truth doesn't obey, it doesn't sell, it doesn't conform, it burns. And the world built on illusions cannot survive too much light. So what do you do now? You don't try to change the whole world. You start with yourself. You read, not because it's trendy, but because every book is a rebellion against stupidity. You think, not to feel superior, but to stay alive inside. You speak truth, even when it trembles, because silence in the face of stupidity is its greatest ally. And you protect your attention as if it were the last pure thing left, because in many ways it is. Attention is your consciousness. It's your power, your essence, your life. And if they can own that, they own you. In the end, maybe intelligence isn't about IQ or eloquence or academic degrees. Maybe it's the simple act of seeing clearly and still choosing compassion, of knowing the world is absurd but refusing to become cynical, of facing stupidity without becoming it. Bonhoeffer said that stupidity is not an intellectual defect, but a moral one. So intelligence, then, is not just the ability to think, but the courage to care, to remain kind in a world that rewards cruelty, to remain aware in a world that worships comfort, and to remain free in a world that loves chains. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your knowledge, not your cleverness, but your refusal to be seduced by stupidity. So the next time someone calls you too serious, too quiet, or too intense, smile. Because what they really mean is, you're not asleep. And that's your greatest rebellion. The world doesn't need more smart people chasing success. It needs more wise people who refuse to play stupid. Because in the age of manufactured stupidity, to think clearly, to love deeply, and to remain awake is the most radical act of all. And if you can do that, if you can keep your mind your own, then no matter how loud the world becomes, you will have already won. And maybe that's where the story really begins. Not with revolutions, not with uprisings, but with one mind choosing to stay awake. Because the truth is, you can't save the world, but you can save your world. You can make your corner of reality less polluted by lies, less hypnotized by noise. And sometimes that's enough. Because clarity is contagious. That's your inheritance. That's your birthright as a human being. Not comfort, not certainty, but the ability to question everything. To rebuild meaning from the ashes of illusion. So when you feel tired, disillusioned, or defeated, remember this. The world doesn't get better because people believe in hope. It gets better because someone, somewhere, refuses to be stupid. There's a scene in every great tragedy where the hero realizes something awful. That the people he's trying to save don't want to be saved. They love their chains. They mistake comfort for happiness. And that's when the hero faces a choice. Join them and sleep peacefully in ignorance, or stay awake and bear the weight of knowing. That choice defines your soul, because the truth will never make you popular, it won't make you rich, it won't make you comfortable, but it will make you free. And freedom, in an age like this, is sacred. Maybe that's what the philosophers meant all along. That enlightenment isn't about becoming wise. It's about staying human in a machine made to dehumanize you. It's about remembering how to feel when the world teaches numbness. It's about daring to care when everyone else has turned apathy into armor. Because thinking is not just about the mind. It's a form of love. To think deeply is to love reality enough to face it.
And that's what stupidity destroys, the courage to love truth. So let others laugh. Let them drown in their screens, chanting slogans they don't understand, chasing pleasures that don't satisfy. Let them call it freedom. You'll know better. Because freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is understanding what you are doing and why. Every empire of stupidity collapses the same way. Not with explosions, but with silence. When the thinkers stop thinking, the poets stop writing, the questioners stop asking, the darkness wins by default. So don't stop. Don't apologize for your depth. Don't shrink to fit the shallow world. Your thoughts may not change the entire system, but they might save one person, maybe even yourself. And in a time like this, that's enough. You don't need to scream. You don't need to argue. Just live as proof that intelligence and kindness can coexist. Show that depth doesn't need arrogance, and wisdom doesn't need followers. Be the quiet force that reminds others what being awake looks like. Because every time you choose thought over impulse, every time you choose silence over noise, you weaken the empire of stupidity just a little more. Every small act of awareness is a rebellion. And that's the paradox no tyrant, no system, no algorithm can defeat. That truth, once seen, can never be unseen. So if you've listened this far, you are not ordinary. You are not asleep. You are one of the few left who still feels the ache of awareness, the discomfort of clarity, the loneliness of understanding. But don't run from it. That pain is proof of your humanity. It means your soul is still intact. And maybe, just maybe, that's all that matters. Because the future doesn't belong to the loud. It belongs to those who can think quietly and act courageously. To those who can bear the weight of truth without losing compassion. To those who can walk through the noise without forgetting who they are. So guard your mind, stay awake, and never apologize for being the one who sees. Because when stupidity becomes the norm, clarity itself is revolution. And maybe, just maybe, the next age won't belong to the fools after all. It will belong to those who dared to think when thinking was forbidden.